Okay, while we're figuring this out right now as to who we thought were the great, who we thought were the better companies and everything, I'm going to ask Axel to kind of come up here and talk a little bit about what he does, what Society 3 does. There's always something that's interesting that's going on in the marketplace where you have somebody out there disrupting the disruptors. And I'd like Axel to talk a little bit about a new business model for business accelerators that is going to be really exciting. And if none of you have been to Switzerland, this will be a great opportunity for you. Okay? All right? Please.
Thanks, George. Yeah, so I did have a little presentation, but I think I don't need it.
Okay.
We started in 2014. It was actually in January 2014 when we decided to retire. We actually, like a week later, we said, no, this is just way too boring. And since we worked with a few startups already, we said, wouldn't it be very cool if we just take the time we want and the time is needed to help startups grow. And so, that said, I realized that this decision was actually keeping me more busy than I ever thought. In any case, but it's also a lot of fun. When we started the first accelerator batch then in April 2014, honestly, we just did what everybody else did. We just copied it. And like a year later, I thought, I've never done that before. I mean, typically, I'm part of these disruptors, since I started. So when I started my first company way back in the 80s, it was a distribution company, and we changed distribution, the whole model. And since in trading there is no technology involved, the only way to win is if you do an entirely different business model, which we did. It was, from the outside, very simple. We said, okay, we don't sell directly to any end user, which every distributor did back then. We sell exclusively through resellers. And the whole thing grew from 0 to 5 billion in revenue. We outperformed every conceivable competitor, and people didn't invest in the very first place because they said there's absolutely, positively zero chance in hell that you will ever compete with these big guys. And we knew we will win because we knew how dealers and computer resellers, how conflicting the business is with their distributors, because the big deals go to the distributor and the small deals go to the dealer. And we said, this is stupid. So, back to Accelerator, I thought, the model of today's accelerators is somewhat a little bit strange. Somebody who's a startup says, okay, I need money, and instead of telling you what you really need, the accelerator, first of all, takes not the money, but takes equity, 7 to 10%. And typically about 9 months later, the company is already in a way somewhere between 3 million in a valuation if you did a great job. So you effectively paid about $300,000 for the accelerator program. I thought, is everybody wrong? Did I miss something? And I started the same way like everybody else because I thought, well, this is probably the right thing to do, but we realized it's not. We asked our badges what they think about the model, about what we did, and initially they said, hey, this is really great, we couldn't do it without you, and so on, and said, okay, it's all nice, thank you very much, but what is the real story? I really want to know how you feel. And they said, pretty much everybody I asked said, well, a 3-month program, this is actually too long. Can't we do? We're all smart guys. If we build companies, we get things immediately. Can't we do this in 1 week? Highly compressed, everything we need to know, and then you guys guide us for the next 3 months, and then we'll take it from there, and then we see how everything works. And so we thought, well, this is just to the point. And so we made a change and said, you know what, screw the 3 months, we do it in 1 week. And so we were working the last basically 2.5 months on the curriculum. It's almost like a training classroom. It's super intense, it's a lot of stuff, but I'm pretty confident we can do this in 1 week. Now we realized in the first first part of actually the second day and the fifth day is all about financing. Because this is where most companies screw up. It's not on the product side. I mean, there has never been, as far as I know, there has never been a company that screwed up because of their product or their technology. Even though in retrospect many think so, but it's number one is on the finance side and number two is on the market side, and sometimes you can flip it around. It's never on the product side. So then we realized if we can help you guys finance through the first 3 months or the next 3 months or whatever, you know, just stay afloat, stay alive, and know everything you need to know to actually go fundraising and go fundraising seriously, then why not fundraise afterwards, after the accelerator, instead of basically with the accelerator? And so we made that change, I think that was back December last year. Again, we talked to startups and everybody said, no, we need the cash right away, we're almost dead. And I talked to 5 startups. I said, okay, let's go down to numbers, because I needed to know as well, because I didn't want to say, well, this is the new model. And in every case we found, okay, there's either they hired already too many people, which has nothing to do with accelerator yes or no, and it has nothing to do with can I get funds right now. It has to do with a mistake they made, they have to fix rather than fix it through additional equipment or additional money. So in all the cases we figured out there's actually a runway of rather 6 months than it must be in right now. And then we decided it's probably much better for both sides, investors and you guys, to have a fair valuation after you know everything you need to know. I mean, not just the pitching, but the whole thing. I mean, bold visions, stuff like, you know, I was playing off with, I think it was David earlier. You know, if the investor has the feeling, okay, this team is not 1,000% committed, is so, I mean, obsessed about the idea they're doing, then it's so much harder to win them as an investor. So there's a couple of those things, and so we decided, you know what, we'll do the investment round later on, and it was a little bit, I mean, I would say we're a little bit proud of what we have done so far, because we have one of the highest funding rates from our 5 benches we had before, so we knew those ones who are really, really good, they will get funding anyway. But at a valuation that is very different than in today's valuations of 6, 7, 10% of what you have. You get typically 50,000, sometimes even only 30,000, because 20,000 accelerator cost was right deducted from what you actually get, and then you get a home, and you have a desk, and then you have a convertible note, but the convertible note actually goes again against your equity because it's a convertible note at the next round, so equity goes out again. And if you look at what it takes to get your company off the ground and finance through to an IPO, well, it takes a lot of rounds, and every round takes equity. And you start with 100%, and you don't believe as a first-time entrepreneur how fast equity actually goes out, and all kinds of things. And then there's an advisor, and then there's a couple of people in the team, and so on. And there's 25% employee pool, and all of a sudden you stand there and say, okay, I actually have still left 32%. So there's a big discussion going on between investors and entrepreneurs, and even myself are still fighting it. If you don't have 50% at your IPO, you are done. I can promise you. And if you look at retrospect, look at all the top, not just top, look at all the companies who went to an IPO in Silicon Valley in the last 10 years. Every single company, you will find one interesting pattern. The team had always roughly 50% at the IPO. And those who didn't make it for numerous reasons. But there's one situation that you need to be aware of. You're an entrepreneur and you look forward. You have a goal that is larger than life and higher than the sky that you reach. And you have investors in their businesses to be careful with the money. Their businesses to weigh up risks. And when they are in charge, meaning they own more then the risk management comes in sooner than you think. And if you say, no, we need to get the company over there, and they say, no, 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 you get it over there, what do you do? 50%? Done. Now, the big trouble is that if you look at, again, and you can take this if you have the time, look at these companies who didn't make it to an IPO, at best were merged with something else here in Silicon Valley, because that's still the hot spot. You will recognize that in most of those cases, the CEO who founded it is not CEO any longer. There was another CEO put in by the investors, and the merger happened somehow. And so the root cause is, when you give up too much equity early on, you lose control over the company. And it isn't about control freak being something like that. It's about having the control over decisions through the next 10 years, when you have to make the CEO decision, pull your CEO card and pull the 50% card and saying, dear investors, I'm very sorry, but we're maybe not in agreement, but you have to recognize I still own the company and I'm still the CEO, and this is the path we're going. And you cannot imagine how many board discussions guys like, I know for a fact, like Mark Zuckerberg, or also Mark Benioff from Salesforce.com had. Mark was at one point at risk, Mark Benioff, to actually get out of the company, but nobody could fire him. Now, if you know Mark Benioff, you probably know his previous boss from Oracle. I don't know what happened over there. I just know from people who were there that there was, sometimes like war. But these guys could control their business, their destiny, and the company. And so, one of the things that I just want to leave with you is take absolutely care of your equity. That's the only thing you have. And if you screw up on the financial side, it just doesn't matter what your product does, because you're not in control anymore. And so we built that new accelerator, and part of it was a review we did from the last 2 years of running the accelerator. And there are a couple things. Number one, we realized how important the team is. And I also realized how many solopreneurs still try. And I can tell you, and this is here in the Valley, is that an almost total no-go, and it kind of walks over to Europe and to Asia, that venture capitalists or even savvy solo investors, like business angels, don't invest in solopreneurs anymore. And I also was kind of shaking and said, well, if I would run a new company and I just wouldn't want to have any kind of co-founders with me, would that be a bad idea? And initially I felt, well, I should be able to do that. But I also realized the risk is so much higher than with a whole team who founded a company, that I understood, okay, that's probably what investors are looking like. And then I started to look at, again, to the last 20 years actually of big companies, and not only in Silicon Valley, but also abroad. And I realized none of them, there was not a single one of these big IPO type companies who had a solopreneur. It was built by one man and take it all the way up. In the past, like 100 years ago, that was not only possible, that was actually the norm. But that has radically changed in the last 50 years. So, do we have solopreneurs here? Some? None? One? Two? Okay. So, all I can tell you is take the time to find a co-founder. It is absolutely essential. It's not only because you wouldn't get funding. There's so much going on in a company if you're 2 or even 3. And I realized my previous company, I was actually starting it not really alone. It was Marita and me, but we were a sort of family. And then I wanted to have my CFO join the company. And I put already, big 7-digit numbers into that company. And I asked him to come as a co-founder like 2 years later. And I asked him to put down $200,000, which I knew he had. And I knew it was pretty much everything he had. And he is that, Axel, we don't need to discuss this. There's absolutely no way. And I told him that I want him to put everything in so that if something goes wrong, that he loses everything like me. And it was a 6-month debate, back and forth. I wanted him, but I didn't want him for free. And I didn't want him for, okay, no pay or all the things that entrepreneurs do these days. I want him to be up to the neck, absolutely in this company, and live or die with it. So 6 months later, he agreed to do that, and I was very happy that he did. Today, he is the CEO of the company. I could step down. We're running at close to $500 million in revenue, and he does just a superior job. I know how he would have done this without being totally up to here. There were situations like in every company where it's difficult, like when the stock market broke down. I mean, it wasn't super difficult, but he would not let go, obviously not. I mean, because he would have lost everything. And so having a co-founder or a team of founders who absolutely invest everything they have in the company, that's one of the things I would like you to consider. The other thing I realized when talking to investors is the lack of a big vision. Now, most of you have a big vision, but then most of you also probably have the hardest time to articulate that vision. What is that big thing? And I see many companies saying, okay, I have this app and I have already 40,000 downloads and I'm serving the music market or something. And so what's the big vision? Well, then I have 1 million downloads. But guys, this is not a big vision. This is just more of what you have already. And so when you're looking at big visions, it's how are you helping shape the future of our society? And if you have an answer to that, that's a big vision. I mean, when the Google boys said, we wanted to index, that was the first version, now it was organized, we wanted to organize the world's knowledge. Every information out there we want to organize. Well, back then, I don't know whether you can imagine how these 2 Russian guys who lived here, were at university, and had this pretty cool search engine, how could they think that much? Well, they knew this is what we want to do. And when you listen to Mark Zuckerberg, back in 2006-ish, he said once in an interview, I want, because the discussion was about who was going to pay for all that. And said, I will find a way that somehow we tax users or industry, and I don't care right now, but I know that everybody will be on Facebook. And it wasn't that everybody is on Facebook, but he knew that his way of communicating, or letting people communicate and share things, will be at one point in time essential enough that there will be no competitor. And that's what he said. And he's pretty much there. I mean, we see arguments that the young people don't go there anymore. They go to, what was it?
Snapchat.
Sorry? Snapchat? Snapchat, yeah. So, yeah, there is now a competitor. He wanted to buy Snapchat, as you probably know, for $3 billion. But this guy also said, not interested. Who of you would take the $3 billion for the companies you are currently building? Come on, honestly. Yeah, it's very tough. But what I'm saying is, and this is part of the whole building a super strong company. If you're giving up at that point right now, then for one reason, that you're not sure that what you're actually doing is that great. And if you're not sure that it's that great, understand investors that they're not investing. Even though you have the best pitch and the best guys who are helping you and all kinds of stories, you will not get this job done. Even if you get it done right now, and you probably do, then there's an A round, a B round, and a C round, and you will notice how tough it is. But the interesting thing is that pretty much everything we all guys do, entrepreneurs, has an impact to our society. I mean, to all of us, one way or the other. And the more you can explain what that impact is, And the more you can realize for yourself how big it might be, and you build everything around it, and have a view of the next 5, 6, 7 years, then that impact will give you the company that you are actually wanting to have. So who has a good idea about your own companies right now? What is in 5 to 7 years? 2, 3, sort of. Yeah. And who thinks this is just way far out? Come on. Okay, some. There's one thing, and this is absolutely right here, Silicon Valley. All of you do things today, and produce things, and build things. And if you talk to each other, which most of you do, you get actually a picture of what's going on in the next 5 to 10 years. If you're not going to do it, nobody else is doing it. Right? I mean, there is nobody than you guys who's doing it. Now, if you look back in time, whether it's 3D printing or social media, I mean, you take everything. Everything we have mainstream today is at least 10 years old. 3D printing was developed in 1989, brought to market, took way longer than we all expected. Social media, the same thing. We thought, okay, it's taking all over. And still today, people say, oh, you know, the big companies, they still don't get it, and blah, blah, blah. So if you look around, and this is what George, for instance, always says, you know, connect with each other. Because if you know what you guys are developing, you know what's up in 10 years. And if you take your own business and put that into that perspective, you get a pretty solid picture of where your business actually can go. And you might even find partners, and you might even find others who say, well, I'm building this, and if you're building this, and if we're coexisting, do our two things respectively, well, you shape that part of the market. And so finance, take your team, look at where the market is going, where your market is going, and then build a very robust go-to-market strategy. I mean, I think we saw this today, and the questions showed it, and I can only say, yeah, the go-to-market strategy is something that gives you between 50 and 100% of the funding potential. If you have a potential for $2 million in funding and your go-to-market strategy is weak, right there, just because of that, to $1 million or lower. And if you're looking for 300,000, you will have a hard time to find these investors. And you will continue to run around, and you will hear people say, oh, I talked to at least 50. And you think, okay, gosh, maybe I need to talk to 52. Well, I think you need to talk to 5 or 10. And if they don't bite, then work on whatever is wrong, because there is something wrong. Investors look for investment opportunities these days more than at any time in history. Real estate is at an all-time high. Blue chips, very hard to predict where it's going. Gold is too high and too much fluctuation. Bonds in many countries not even existing anymore. So there is not a lot of opportunities for investors. And as you know, we moved to Switzerland about 3 months ago, and kind of because we opened bank accounts and we got into these banks and got an idea of what's going on. Just so you know, there's about $14 billion in cash from average Joe lying on the bank and not creating a single penny in interest. $14 billion. There's another roughly $200 billion of the Innovators who would love to invest but don't really know where. And there's roughly $1 trillion in Europe that is basically looking for investments. So there is money to the wazoo, and I think we talked about this many times here in these events. I just saw it from a different perspective, and I have to tell you, they're looking for opportunities, but that doesn't mean that because you're a startup you get money to the wazoo. It's these things. Is there a robust team? Is there a bold vision? Do you have a go-to-market strategy that is really what's up with the whole technology side is almost a side effect, but the business side must be compelling. Otherwise, you have the hardest time to get funding. But if that's right, if this is really cool, you know, this is why people say, well, this is totally crazy. These guys get, you know, valuations. This is insane. Well, they get it because they have probably something that people see a need for or potential. And so if you look at it into these business-driven factors of your company, of your startup, again, it's go-to-market strategy, it's your team, it's your finance side, and if you build it around that, you will come to one thing pretty quickly, that your business model may still not be sound and proof. Now, if you have these 4 components now, guess what? You will be able to outperform any competitor on the planet. And that's what I try to help all of you guys consider. Business model, the team, the finance, and the go-to-market strategy. These 4 elements drive your business in the future. And if you go back in your shop and continue coding because you think you need to first complete your product, think of what I just said. Because every product will change as soon as you have your other 4 factors really done. And if your business model is all of a sudden different, it will drive changes in your product. And if you code it yourself, you hated to change it. So therefore your business model sucks. And when the business model sucks, the go-to-market strategy follows, and the financing model follows these 2 things, then you have a hard time to go forward. Thank you very much.